What's the joke?
Just pound stims, go to the gym, fuck sleep. Like, who cares? Sleep's
Yeah.
not that important.
You can always compensate with drugs for sleep.
You can always compensate with drugs. More drugs, more better.
Welcome back, everyone, on episode number 3 of House of Knowledge. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrient timing, mainly peri-workout nutrition and the utilization of different supplements and medication to basically enhance our performance and get a better use out of the nutrients that we are ingesting. What I then would ask to start out to you guys is, do you guys think that nutrient timing does work, or is it just calories? Do we just need to focus simply on our calories, maybe get our protein in and then get maximum results? Or can we utilize nutrients and maybe utilize certain supplements to get more out of the food that we ingest, get a better pump, get better recovery, and maybe even stay leaner? Do you guys think there's any application for timing or nutrients?
Yeah, I think you can look at like the degrees of how they matter, and like of course number one is the amount of calories, because if you're trying to lose weight or gain weight, if the calories are wrong, then there's just not gonna happen what you want to happen. And then you have the macronutrients, but you also have nutrient timing. It's not as important, but it's not completely irrelevant. And I think the most important one of all the timings is how you, for muscle building of course, is how you spread your protein. Like if you have, like, let's say 250 grams of protein per day, if you eat it all in one meal, that's definitely not gonna result in optimal results. So you want to spread it to, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 protein ingestions.
Yeah, I think the maximum amount of meal spreads, basically, like meal frequencies, after 6, there's not any added benefit. And even starting from meal 4, you get so much diminishing returns that basically spreading it out more than 4 doesn't add much more muscle accrual. But going from 4 to 5 to 6 still does see an improvement. Doesn't mean that going beyond 6 all of a sudden, of course, is detrimental for the gains. But going beyond 6 probably doesn't do much more. And I think it, like you said, the most important part is spreading out the protein, because over the day we want to get like the best possible use out of our muscle protein synthesis. And this, of course, goes in a wave throughout the day. And we just want to make use of as many possible maximum amounts of muscle protein synthesis. And just putting our protein into one meal will probably not be as efficient.
No, because you're gonna spike muscle protein synthesis, but it doesn't scale infinitely. It's not like you keep eating more protein and it's gonna go up higher. So there is like a cap, and then it has to come down again before it goes up again. So that's why you spread it out, and you have to have enough time between them. Because if you would eat protein like every hour throughout the entire day, then I am gonna guess that's also gonna be not a good idea.
Like eating more frequent, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't do anything indeed. But Blast, what would you say about it? What is then a good spread of protein? Is there an optimal range where we can say we need to eat like maybe every 4 hours, maybe every 2 hours, a certain amount of protein to then get the maximum amount of protein synthesis?
Yeah, I think that like you have to cobble together a theory from like multiple pieces of literature. There's like leucine threshold to activate muscle protein synthesis, and then there is like how strongly can you activate muscle protein synthesis, which is what Zeus was talking about earlier. There's studies where they look at like ingesting smaller amounts of protein over a larger window versus consuming that same amount of protein in a single session. The total magnitude of the muscle protein synthesis is higher when you take it all at once. In this one control experiment, you need a sufficient amount of leucine to hit like the maximum protein spike, or sorry, the maximum muscle protein synthesis spike. And so there's definitely an argument for eating enough protein in one sitting to get the maximal amount of muscle protein synthesis. But then going beyond that, it might be wiser to spread out your protein so that you get multiple larger muscle protein synthesis windows for the day. But then there's that study that came out sometime in 2003, I think it was, or 2023, where they measured they radio labeled all the amino acids, and then they They check 25 grams protein ingestion in the recovery window versus 100 grams of protein in the recovery window. And the exact same amount of amino acids was absorbed by the gastrointestinal tract, and the exact same amount of amino acids was integrated into skeletal muscle tissue. So there's no cap to how much protein can be used, at least up to 100 grams. I'd love to see a study that looks at 300 grams. And that's only in the recovery window. So we haven't tested 100 grams at once in a non-recovery window. And how many times a day are you training? Probably once, maybe twice, if you're really hardcore.
I've seen that study as well, I believe. And basically what it is, indeed, you ingest this amount of protein, but it's not like this protein is wasted. Your body then absorbs it, or not absorbs it, but that starts digesting it, and then you still get a use out of each muscle protein synthesis peak out of those 100 grams, equally if you would then take 25, 25, 25, for example. So that's true. Does anyone want to add anything to this?
Just a small thing, like the leucine threshold, just so people know. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 20 or maybe 30 grams of complete protein would have enough leucine to be enough. So if you have a meal with less than like 20 grams of protein, that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, and that's in general. That's not only around the training window. If you're eating, always make sure to, for starters, get a whole protein source with all essential amino acids. And if you then eat it to get the maximum amount of muscle protein synthesis, we want to get at least 20 grams of protein in. If you get less than 20 grams of protein from this direct source, you're not utilizing the maximum potential of muscle protein synthesis at that moment. Doesn't mean you're not going to make any gains, but you're just leaving probably some gains on the table indeed. Is there then anything to say for certain applications of protein around the training window where we then need to maybe consider different protein sources or maybe utilize different amounts of protein sources? What's your guys' view on this or experience with this?
Yeah, doing a lean source of protein, very lean as you could possibly do around pre and post workout, and having a high fat protein source or added fat before bed to slow down digestion of the protein and the carbs that you're eating, and a lean source of protein right after. So I personally do shrimp, and then I do 100 grams of carbs worth of rice, so it's gonna in and out super quick. And then before my workout, personally, I just do like oats and like the 7 grams of fat from peanut butter, just so I'm not getting that instant dump of carbs. There's going to be something for me there when I get to the gym, and it's not going to, I'm not going to go feel lightheaded during my workout. And then I also do, the intra-nutrition, 25 grams of carbs from Gatorade powder. So that way, if, when you're having those longer sessions, my sessions last about 2 hours, including cardio. I think intra-nutrition is incredibly important for that, for extended long periods of time where you're lifting or cardio. I think it's very, very beneficial.
Yeah, personally, I would say because you mentioned don't eat a high in fat protein source pre and post workout. That is not so much about the protein content, of course, but then we're going to look more at how the carbs are utilized.
Yeah, but also the protein, because the protein is also gonna digest slower. So
yeah, sure. But for example, pre-workout, there can be made an argument to indeed add some fat to it, just like Max does with the peanut butter, because otherwise you might cause too big of a crash, especially if you eat a pre-workout meal like more than 1 hour before the workout. I think adding in fats does come in handy, because otherwise you crash too early.
Or you could take carbs during the training session.
Yes, but most of the time or at least what I experience, is that even if I then take carbs intra-workout, if I have the first meal pre-workout a bit too far away from the training with not any fats, the crash for me personally can't really be catched with these intra-workout carbs, because I will have already dipped. So I would personally then prioritize either a closer to training window pre-workout meal without any or much fats added to it, or if you eat it more than 1 hour pre-workout, a little bit of fats together with the protein, a quick digesting protein and a high glycemic index carb. And that would then extend the digestion just far enough to not crash right before or right at the beginning of the training, and then add the intra-workout in as well to boost the training.
What about for super high intensity training, like if you're doing a meet for powerlifting or something like that? How do you control your nutrition for something like that?
I try my best to eat stuff relatively closer to training, like within an hour, and that'll be similar to what Max said, where I'll just try to have carbs and a lean source of protein, avoid fats just because they seem to make me groggy or tired regardless. But I never deal with any intra-workout or peri-workout stuff, and I probably should because I know that there's benefits to it, but it's more so because we're talking about like optimal timing and macros and stuff for it, but sometimes if you just can't, the best thing to do, similar to how Zeus said, number one priority is just getting it all in. If I can't get it in before training, I just try not to worry about it. I get what I can in before training, just so I at least have something in there.
Yeah, but I think then the most important thing, if we have to pick some form of peri or intra-workout nutrition type, I would, of course, throughout the day eat. But if I would have to pick a pre-workout meal or an intra-workout shake, I would personally go for the intra-workout shake if there's no other option there, because I think the utilization of an intra-workout recovery drink in some way or form, be that carbs with a little bit of EAAs, maybe some hydrolyzed whey in there, that in and of itself will work anabolic. We get a reduction of cortisol, for example, over the long term. That's not something we're going to notice immediately, but over the long term, that will lead to more muscle being built. I've even seen studies where the ingestion of an intra-workout drink with, I believe, 50 grams of carbohydrates, 6 grams of EAAs, then led to a baseline cortisol, as if the group didn't train. So we basically get a perfect recovery for ourselves compared to not drinking the intra-workout shake. So I think the utilization of an intra-workout shake, if you have to pick something, is something that will be highly beneficial. Just from that aspect alone, not even talking about the performance that it's going to boost and other benefits it has for muscle growth.
Zeus, you are you were a
Zeno?
powerlifter and now you've transitioned into bodybuilding. Your workouts lengthened.
No, they have shortened quite dramatically because powerlifting that's one of the reasons why I switched, because I don't have all the time in the world anymore. But powerlift training, it's like 3-4 hours isn't unheard of, because you have to hit your sets, you have to hit your lifts, and you rest as long as it takes to hit your lifts, which can sometimes take a long time because also cardiovascularly, powerlifting of powerlifters, me included, aren't the fittest people on earth. So there's a lot of resting going on between sets, for me at least.
A friend of mine, and then I go to the gym with him sometimes at the same time. I finish my entire workout and he's not done benching. And then he still has to do accessories. It's insane.
Yep.
It's literally
Yeah,
like 6 or 8 sets of bench, but it takes 1.5 hours or something. And then he still has to do all the accessories.
Yeah,
It's
that's
wild.
the reason why I quit too. Is I did powerlifting for 2 years, and I was like, yeah, this takes so fucking long. It would take me an hour and a half just to finish my squat sets. And I'm like, what the heck? And I wouldn't be out of the gym for 3 hours. And now my workout takes an hour.
Yeah.
Intra-workout
then-
nutrition becomes that much more important when you're training that long.
Just wanted to ask, like,
Yeah.
at what time would we say start using an intra, and when would we not use an intra from a performance-based perspective? I don't know if anyone has any intake.
Are
on
you
this.
saying in regards to like how long your workout is? Like if your workout is less than
exactly.
this much, don't
For
do
example, if I have a 20-minute workout, will there be any use of using intra-workout shake? I think
Depends on
cortisol-based.
how long before your meal how long before your training you had a meal.
it. Yeah, did
Like
you
your
train
blood
fasted?
glucose
Well,
is-
then yeah, do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, it's a bit too much of a nuanced question. But I think if we try to speak from a general sense, with the baseline of all the other meals being there, like we have the pre-workout, we have the post-workout, always at the right place, when would you then utilize the intra-workout shake? Would it be more beneficial? That's maybe the better question, for someone training half an hour, or is it more beneficial for someone training 3 hours, that there's really more of a use case of utilizing?
The longer you train, the more sense it makes, for sure. To put an hour on it, I don't have an idea, because also this intra workout nutrition, I'm now trying it because now I'm bodybuilding. But when I used to do these 3-4 hour workouts, I never used intra-workout nutrition. But it's also like how much muscle glycogen is, even though it's maximum, how much is a single, double, or triple gonna take from you? Not that much. It's a whole different ball game when you do like sets of 15 reps. So it depends on many factors.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to add on, especially even without the regards of like performance. Just talking about the cortisol, for example, that will mainly play a role if you do extremely high intensity, because that will raise, of course, your cortisol even higher, and then we get a bigger benefit from having great recovery. For example, if you do a 3-hour slow-paced powerlifting training at RPE 7, that's not going to have such a high impact on, for example, your cortisol, but it's also not going to deplete glycogen as much compared to doing 4 sets of 15 reps for bicep curls. Then the bicep is empty after. So indeed, that's stuff that we need to take into consideration.
Yeah.
What would you guys personally then take as an intra-workout? Is there anything the viewer needs to think about specifically? Do they just eat rice intra-workout, or is it something else that we take to boost the performance?
Whenever I did do it, I used to just fill up a shaker cup with like Fruit Loop cereal, and then I just like unscrew the lid and I just like pour some into my hand and eat it.
It's
That
convenient.
wasn't good. I just felt sick having food in my stomach, like fresh food, even if it was like, just sugary cereal. So I think a drink is more beneficial to that. Don't do solid food.
Definitely. Because what we then need to look at is, of course, because we have only 1 hour training or 2 hour training, the food that we ingest, that has to be digested as soon as possible. Because 1, we want to utilize it, and 2, we don't want to cause it any trouble. It's not like we want to have like a full stomach with 100 grams of rice during a workout. So Caleb, that's mainly why indeed we want to use a drink compared to eating, for example, Fruit Loops, which might even digest properly for some people, but the drink is probably beneficial. Is there then different types of carb powders that we can use? One might maybe be more beneficial than the other, one can imagine.
Yeah, I have used 2 different ones. First was dextrose, but that made me very nauseous, fucked up my training, and now I'm using a highly branched cyclic dextrin or
Yeah.
something, and this one is like. It also tastes like I'm just drinking water. I don't notice any stomach upsets. So for me, I have found the one that works, and because that's all we need. Something that, like you said, doesn't fuck you up and is gonna be fast digesting.
Blast, what did you want to say?
No, I was just going to say that the only one that I know about is dextrose.
Okay. Yeah, I think from a price perspective, dextrose is the better one. But there we indeed notice that many people get like gastric problems. They might become nauseous at too much of the dextrose, or it just doesn't digest properly. That's some issue that many people also report, even with the entire idea of an intra-workout shake, that it then depresses their hunger, and after the training they're still feeling this weird like nauseous full feeling. Can't really be described. I also sometimes have that, but indeed, like Zaino said, the dextrose for many people just doesn't digest properly, and then the next best option is probably the high branched cyclic dextrin. Indeed.
I think that most people are probably not eating within the 30 minutes before they start training. I mean, you have to like transport yourself to the gym, and then you need to get changed, and then you start training. Go ahead.
Eating 30 minutes before your training is probably not the best idea. I then would utilize a dextrose shake as well. If I would choose as a pre-workout food, 30 minutes pre-workout, then it must, in my opinion, be a shake, because I think any other option of like actual solid foods won't be digested fast enough to then have a proper training where your stomach is empty.
Yeah, I agree. So like I was saying, I don't think people are eating 30 minutes before they go to the gym. I would say on average people are eating 60 to 90 minutes before they go to the gym. And so your primary energy source comes from carbohydrates. Your carbohydrates are digesting your going to have your big glucose spike, anywhere between 45 and 90 minutes after you consume your meal, depending on like what carbohydrates you're eating. And then it's going to be mostly done by 2 hours after that. So if you're eating like roughly an hour or maybe a little bit more than an hour before you start training, and you're training for 2 hours, for example, like you're going to have all of the glucose from your meal is going to be processed and utilized or stored, and then you're not going to have any more blood glucose left. So if you want to have glucose, in your blood for the training, then I would say if you are training for more than 1 hour and you're eating approximately an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour before you train, then that would all of a sudden, now I would say an intra-workout shake is a good idea.
Yep. And we also see intra-workout shakes this comes mainly from carbs, reduce muscle soreness after training. It creates a generally, like I said before, better recovery environment. So I would say even if you have eaten close enough to your training and are training shortly, even then getting in an intra-workout shake, if money permits it, might still be beneficial, I think. We have talked about carbohydrates intra-workout, but what about the protein intra-workout? Do you guys think there's any benefits of specifically timing protein, specifically timing essential amino acids during the training to get any benefit?
Not during.
You don't think so?
Pre and post, very
Okay.
important.
Yeah, I think you want to hit the leucine threshold before training, or even like put it in a shaker, but then you down it all at once, but not sip on it slowly over like a 2-hour training window, because all those little sips are not going to get you above this leucine threshold. So I think that would be a bit of...
I think it's really important that it's not BCAAs, that it's like a whole protein, because when you
EAAs.
don't have circulating amino acids, like you don't have the constituent materials for building like messenger proteins, which are required for physiological adaptation and the functioning of your body. So if you have amino acids in your bloodstream while you're training, then you're able to build messenger molecules that tell your body parts what to do or how to respond to training stimuli. And if you don't have that, you're depriving yourself from physiological adaptations. So you're leaving gains on the table. Like going to the gym without eating protein first is very not optimal. And then obviously there's the bro science, like you got to have your protein in the window right after you work out. And at least with that study where they did the 100 grams of protein in the post-recovery window, it might also be like that in the non-post-recovery window. But at the very least, in the post-recovery window, it's very important that you get as much protein as possible in after your workout, and probably as soon as you can after your workout.
I can tell you from personal experience how much it actually affects gains. For my first 3 years of lifting, I would fast until 5 p.m. and I didn't do intra, I didn't do post, I didn't do pre. I would train on nothing and I wouldn't eat for about 6 hours after. Recently this year, I started doing pre, post, intra, and I got newbie gains all over again. So that's how important it is I gained probably very quickly. I gained a lot of muscle, and that's no extra anything, just adding in pre, post, and intra. It made a massive difference.
That actually reminds me that I may have noticed the same thing, because my first 2 powerlifting competitions, all my training was done, at least 90% of it was done fasted. And in terms of like strength performance, it would have hindered it a bit. It looks like, I was trying to find it, but there's at least one study that I have seen where apparently carbs don't seem to affect overall strength progression too much in terms of timing, at least not compared to muscle growth. So I'm assuming that that's partly why training fasted, so long as the rest of my food throughout the day, my planned macros was relatively decent. But then all of this year, I've just been forcing myself to actually eat every few hours. So like if I'm at work, I'll eat in the morning when I wake up. I eat before I start work as soon as I get there. And then I eat my first break that I try to take 4 hours. Second break I try to take like 2.5, 3 hours later. And then I eat once I get home, which is an hour and a half afterwards. And then I eat dinner. So that's about 6. And that's the main thing that I've changed. My training itself hasn't really changed, besides going between in-season and off-season, but that happened last year and the year before anyway. And I've noticed significant growth as well, so I think that might actually be due to switching away from fasting.
Yeah, definitely. If you go in fasted, I think it's highly recommended to at least not go training fasted. But imagine if it's not permissible otherwise. You wake up at 5 a.m., you have to work at 6 a.m., you have to go straight to the gym to get a 50-minute long training in. I think then, especially using maybe even a pre-workout dextro whey shake or dextro EAA's whey shake would then be recommended, and putting still in the intra-workout shake just to give yourself something to boost the workout. But definitely training fasted is probably going to have a great impact, and if one could choose not to, I would definitely stray away from training fasted because it's not going to do much, except cardio, I think. But
Yeah.
it's unfortunate because I was looking on my phone because I have somewhere on my phone the information on EAAs, so essential amino acids, and whey intra-workout, because I know there is some benefit still to consuming protein. Even at a very slight amount, I believe 6 to 8 grams of essential amino acids did have some benefit. I just can't find what the benefit was. Maybe
My only
anyone knows
question
what
would
I'm talking
be,
about?
is that in the absence of a post-workout
No,
shake
no,
or a
no. It's
post-workout
just
meal?
everything being correct, and then the ingestion of carbohydrates together with EAAs and a hydrolyzed whey did something that would be beneficial, but I can't seem to find it, so that's unfortunate.
Is it also increasing the total amount of like protein or amino acids and carbohydrates that are ingested in the day? Because if the pre-workout, if you have like sufficient blood glucose levels during the workout, and if you have sufficient amino acid circulation during the workout, and you get your post-workout amino acids, then I don't see how it could be very useful. I mean, obviously, if there is like a lull in the muscle protein synthesis window between your pre-workout meal and your post-workout meal, and you're supplementing to hit like another muscle protein synthesis spike in the middle of your workout, then you're increasing the total magnitude of your muscle protein synthesis, and so that makes sense.
Yeah, it did have
But
something to do with that, and the thing was, there was the interesting thing that you didn't need the 20 grams. There was something because of the training and then the utilization of carbohydrates, then even a small ingestion of like 6 to 8 grams of essential amino acids, not even the whole protein, did cause a benefit for muscle growth. But I can't find it. I literally had it prepared for the podcast, but I can't find it. So that's unfortunate. Okay, we've covered pre-workouts. Basically, eat lower fat. Maybe if the food is timed further away from the training, eat some fats to slow down the digestion. Get a lean protein source, preferably one that, I mean, that's always the case, something that digests properly for you. Same goes for the carbs. Then we've covered the intra-workout utilization of carbohydrates. You guys, or everyone says protein, not that relevant intra-workout. I know it is, but I can't find it. And now we can go on to post-workout utilization, because I think that's extremely important. And we do have an interesting window there, maybe 2 to 3 hours post-workout. It's not the anabolic window that was thrown around back in the days, but I do think that there's an interesting window where we should consider the ingestion of carbohydrates as well again. And I think this is where we then can utilize, this is also what we talked about when we met Blast, when I said, does it make sense to grab the carbohydrates away and shuttle them all around the training window? And I think that's a big benefit we can get if we can time our carbs pre, intra, and then especially in the first pre-workout meal, if you can get carbs there, that's extremely important. If you can then get the second meal as well with carbohydrates, and I think up to like 8 hours post-workout, it's really efficient to get the carbohydrates in with the right amount of protein, of course. Depending on where you're trained, that's possible or not possible. And then have the last meal before bed without carbs. I think that's extremely beneficial. But what's your guys' take on it? Does the post-workout nutrition matter in any way, or do we just divide the carbs over the rest of the day and say that will be the maximum amount of results we're going to get?
I think not doing it, like most people that I've heard say, you need to eat it within the hour, like that you get home from the gym. I say no. I mean, I think there was a study that said 4 to 5 hours is when, like, that's the window. And I think just dividing it up into your last, I don't know, whenever, I guess it depends on whenever you go train, but for me, I would have 3 meals left. So yeah, I just divide it up evenly in those hours. And I just usually try to get it in within 3 hours of after that. Because I feel sick right after I go work out. I don't want to eat when I get home. So
I think post-workout was the one that I always made sure was actually done, like, properly. It also tends to be my biggest meal. And like I similarly do feel sick sometimes after, but I also realized that a few times I just had to eat even though I felt sick. And I feel less sick as soon as I actually have food in my stomach. I'm assuming that I only ever feel sick just because all the energy's gone, not because I can't actually stomach food. So that I have the most carbs and most protein out of any other meal. And then days that I did that versus days that I didn't, the following 2 days, I could tell a difference in how I felt in terms of like if I got any DOMs due to a new exercise selection or if I was ramping it up towards a powerlifting meet. There was some training sessions where like the fatigue would set in literally just 2 hours later and I just wanted to fucking sleep for the rest of the day even though it was only midday. But if I'd eaten right after, I could just tell that didn't even happen. It's just way better for recovery.
Anyone else has any take on this?
I think there's 3 things to consider. So the first thing is that the muscle protein synthesis window muscle protein synthesis is also increased post-workout. The length of that window is like when people were originally debunking the the post-workout recovery window being like you have to have your meal within an hour after the training, a lot of people were saying, well, it's not an anabolic window, it's an anabolic barn door. You can't miss it. It's fucking huge. But it's not huge for everybody. It's huge for newbies, and the more trained you are, the smaller it is.
Because there are studies that show that if you don't ingest some form of carbohydrate and protein within like 2 hours, I believe, of the training, then you basically miss out on all the benefits of the elevated glycogen and elevated muscle protein synthesis.
So you want nutrient circulation during muscle protein synthesis windows. That's really important. And if the window is really small because you're a very trained individual, it's like 4 to 6 hours. You have to consider how long it takes for the nutrients that you're consuming to actually become available for utilization, right? Because they first have to be digested, and then you have to get an insulin spike, and then the insulin spike facilitates the storage of those nutrients into your tissues. So there's also the insulin sensitivity window. So there's the insulin sensitivity window, there's the muscle protein synthesis window, and then there's the amount of time that it takes for the food that you've consumed to actually get into circulation and be utilized during those windows. And the windows, the muscle protein synthesis window, it's a curve. So you have more muscle protein synthesis and then it slowly goes down. And it's the same thing with insulin sensitivity. It's not like, oh, it's high and then 4 hours later all of a sudden it goes off, right? So you have like this very high intensity of muscle protein synthesis and insulin sensitivity, and you want to have you want the nutrients that you consume to be available during the highest point of both of those windows. And you want it to be there for as much time as possible during those windows. So optimally, you would have a fucking massive meal. As soon as you finished, you wouldn't even get changed. You'd have it waiting for you in the changing room. You just fucking mow it down immediately, and then you'd slam your insulin, and then it would just drive all that shit right into your muscles. That would be optimal. And the longer that you wait, what's that?
That's what I do, but without the insulin. So I just have like a 80-gram carb shake with protein right after I'm done training.
Me too, dude.
Then I go home, and then I have my post-workout meal, and that basically catches then the huge dip from the dextrose.
Got it. That's the way to do it, man. Have a shake immediately, like in the changing room, and then get home, and the first thing that you do is you have a meal. That's going to maximize the nutrient availability during your muscle protein synthesis and your insulin sensitivity windows. And then obviously you throw insulin into the equation, which is all it's theoretical. So you have to basically correlate data from all of the guys that are fucking huge who I've been doing this for years. And they're like, I was big, or I coached people who were big, and they didn't use insulin. And then we started like leveraging insulin post workout, and then we got like really big. And once you hear enough people say that, you're just like, okay, well, this is probably there has to be something to this theory, right? And so the more food you can get in during that post-workout meal, the more insulin you can use, the more insulin, the more food during that window.
And do you think it's still beneficial for people that don't use insulin to then make use of this higher insulin sensitivity?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely, for sure. Protein specific, like super especially protein, but glucose too.
Yeah,
Actually,
I mean, protein essential because we have this increased muscle protein synthesis because of the training. So I think that's where the original protein window myth came from.
Yeah.
But I think it's perfect to utilize it. But of course, this is all stuff that comes after having everything in check, because just doing this is not going to be the secret to gains. And I think that's what often people confuse. And I think that's why it's good, Zeno, that you started out with. This is the basics. This is what's the most important. And then after that comes protein timing. And then we can look at carb timing. I think that's the right approach. I think that's where many people screw up, because they might see this podcast and they think, whoa, apparently if you time your carbs intra-workout, it drops your cortisol, and then you get even more gains, and then their entire diet is shit, but they got their intra-workout shake.
Yeah, we're selling intra-workout shakes now, and that's like the whole scam is like, buy our fucking supplements.
Buy our muscle protein synthesis stimulator.
That's all we were saying this for, is buy our supplements.
Yeah.
Introducing our new intra-workout.
You're still planning on calling it Cream of House.
No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to release Cream of House, Cream of Rice. The best cream on the market.
Divine protein shake, get out of here.
Yeah, man, we will have whey, that will be the divine protein shake, and then we have the Cream of House, Cream of Rice.
Cream of House. Are we ready to argue about fasted cardio yet? Like, that's like nobody agrees on that, right?
Okay, well, let's take one more step in between, because we started at the wrong point. We started later in the day. We have a training window, pre, intra, post, meals post workout, couple of meals there. We want to target our carbohydrates also in those other post workout meals. But what I personally think is then also important, we have pre-bed meals. And that will basically, in my opinion, then be linked to the fasted cardio. Because if we then cut out carbs in the maybe last meal before bed or even before that, and just make a protein or protein fat meal. If we place those at the end of the day where we don't need the energy, I mean, we don't need carbs going to sleep, we won't be really utilizing them, then we can use the entire night where we're just burning energy, laying around, doing nothing. And then we can do our fasted cardio in the morning, where we will then have depleted glycogen storages. At least that's the theory I stand by. But I don't know if anyone thinks that's useful in any way.
So I'm going to go off of, again, personal experience. I feel better when I have a lot of carbs before bed. I sleep better. I feel like I recover better. And like, it's a very high fat meal. It's a moderate carb meal. And obviously protein is, the same. It's high protein, but I sleep better. Like, I definitely notice it. Like, at least right now I'm in a fat loss phase. My carbs have dropped a lot in my last meal, and my sleep is actually starting to suffer because of that. So,
Zeno, you're nodding over there. You get the same thing. You also eat
for
carbs
me, it's the
before bed,
same thing. Even when I'm cutting, I try to skew carbs toward my training window, but I have to make sure that there are carbs also allocated to the last meal of the day, because when cutting, my sleep always suffers a bit. But if I take away the carbs at the last meal, then my sleep just gets absolutely wrecked. So I agree with Max here.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because that shows then how individualistic it is, because I have the exact opposite. If I add in carbs around my sleep, it fucks up my sleep. Yeah. I won't, I don't know, the carbs, I just feel them in my stomach. Especially, throughout the day, I don't really have that. But if it's later in the day, it just doesn't feel like it's digesting for me. And then I get extremely hot every time I eat. That's something that happens throughout the day anyways. But I will then have that when I'm going to bed, I will basically be sweating in my bed because I'm digesting it, and I just feel it sitting, and then I wake up at night. That's mainly what I get. And I get extremely thirsty from the carbs, so I will drink more, then I have to wake up going to pee. All that stuff happens then for me personally, so that really shows how different it can be. One group says, I can't sleep without the carbs, and the other group says, I can't sleep with carbs. I think Blast and Caleb, you both have the same experience, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I eat probably my last meal 4 hours before I go to bed, and even then, I don't ever have too many carbs in it. So
Okay,
I seem to get quite a long while between my last and first meal of the next day.
4 hours is a
Um,
long time before
But I eat
bed.
dinner at like 6, and then I go to bed at 10. And if I eat later, I'm just gonna have a shit sleep.
Yeah, and that's again, I mean, we can talk about optimal stuff. I think optimally it would be better to have it a bit closer, but if
Yeah.
it's going to screw up your sleep and you know that for sure, then it's just
Yeah.
again individual preferences.
And
Bless,
it'd be
what do
hard
you
to judge. It'd be hard to judge, like, if the little bit of worse in quality sleep is outweighed by the having an extra meal or a little bit of extra food, or vice
Yeah.
versa.
And I think that's what every viewer should do constantly. Weigh out, is this slight marginal benefit that I'm going to get for maybe having protein a little bit closer to going to sleep? Is it worth sleeping less good or having a less of a sleep efficiency? I think that's with every choice you constantly need to think like that. I mean, we have the perfect optimal utopia on paper. Try to live close to it, but in the end, it really comes down to what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, it's also what we talked about earlier for the intra or pre-workout meals. It's like we're talking about what's optimal, but if you get nauseous and your training gets diminished, then I can tell you for sure it's not worth it, because training is always obviously number one.
Yeah, that's the most
Yep.
anabolic. If that's going to suffer,
And sleep is also quite important, so like
Yeah.
you should care about these things.
Which is why I'm like so anti-fasted cardio, is because the training performance deficit from being in a fasted state, I think, it outweighs the benefit of like increasing fatty acid mobilization, like, because it does. Obviously, when you do fasted cardio, it increases fatty acid mobilization. But if you feel like shit, and not everybody does, but most people do.
I personally get like a performance boost, but that's also with like my general work performance. If I don't eat anything, I can perform at a higher state for longer. And that also
Yeah.
occurs if I go, for example, running or doing my cardio. I just get more into this clear zone and clear focus. So I definitely have a better performance. I mean, that's a fact. I can check the stats. I have a better performance if I run or do cardio fasted than I do if I've eaten something, for me personally. And I do then think, because my glycogen is depleted, I mean, where is the energy going to come from? The fat, I think. But studies, of course, show that down the line, if you do fasted cardio or regular cardio, it's not going to burn more fat. But I personally beg to differ. I think it makes a difference.
I think that those studies are not being done in people that are taking training and diet to like the highest point. I think it's like regular Joes, and
That's true.
energy balance is still a huge factor, even for us. Like fasted cardio, it mobilizes more fatty acids, right? But if your total energy balance is so high, it probably means very little, because it's just going to get put back on, like all the the carbohydrates and stuff that
Yeah,
you're eating
so
is just
if
going to.
someone does fasted cardio, but then after just starts eating carbohydrates then again or whatever, yes, it will go back on. But if you utilize your carbs during the training window as energy,
That too,
where
absolutely.
are the carbs? Where should they go? It's not like your body then says, okay, we're going to store these. Oh no, finally we have energy to train. It will be used, and then it's not going to put on. I think that's at least that's my theory about it. The science begs to differ, but like you said, I think certain scenarios like better diet or a well thought out diet changes that dramatically.
I think if you're in like a normal bulk, if you're like in a 350 to like 700 calorie surplus, you could change like where the energy is being used and where the energy is being stored. But I think once you're at like 1,000 calorie surplus, I don't think fasted cardio does anything, because all of that extra energy you're consuming is going to get stored as fat. Like there's no fighting the total energy balance. Like your muscles and your liver can only store so much glycogen. Where is that glucose going? It's going into your fat cells, turning into fatty acids. It's getting stored in adipose tissues. So
Yeah.
if there's like it's a really good argument for it, especially if you feel good in maintenance. Not that I don't subscribe to recomp at all, but like if you're recomping for health purposes and then you're also going to the gym and you're like, well, I want to like maximize my return here, then yeah, fasted cardio is great. And I think fasted cardio also has a place in a cut for sure. I think in like a lean bulk, like a 300 to like 500, maybe even up to 700 calorie surplus, fasted cardio could potentially aid with body composition the same way that, you know, Tren or GH could. They also allowed you to bulk leaner, and I think that fasted cardio can also help you bulk leaner. But I think it's more useful in maintenance. It's more useful in a deficit.
And do we then think that using, for example, GH to, I don't know how to say it properly, like free the fatty acids, mobilize the fatty acids into our bloodstream, that used together with the fasted cardio will then get more benefits?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but one thing to notice is that GH takes a while to hit peak concentrations. So there's like a lot of people that binge GH and then do their fasted cardio, and their fasted cardio is going to be done, and their first meal is already going to be in before the GH hit.
What is it, like 3 to 4 hours or something?
Yeah, it takes a while. So it's not like you can.
How much?
I think
How
it's
long
3 to
does it
4
take?
hours. I think that's when the
3 to 4 hours. It takes a while. So it's not like you can wake up, pin it, do your fasted cardio. So it probably makes more sense to pin it in the evening, to then do the next day in the morning your fasted cardio.
Or
I don't even
wake
know
up
if
at
it
night.
would be effective at that point. Like I think that the GH spike is already gone by then. I think
Just-
morning fasted cardio, like I think if you really want to get the most out of growth hormone overlap with fasted cardio, you got to pin it in the morning, and then you just have to not eat for like a little bit, and then you have to do your cardio maybe like a few hours later or something.
Yeah, or maybe if you, for example, I wake up basically always at 4 a.m. Then if you would do your cardio at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., pin the GH when you wake up at 4 a.m. If that's
I
a
was
standard.
just going to
I
say,
think.
sit it in your bathroom, and when you go take a piss in the middle of the night, go grab it then.
Genius.
Yeah, man, it will be definitely good to have it like in that warm bathroom each and every night, all night long. That will be
I have like one of those little like energy drink mini fridges, like the super small ones.
Yeah, I want to get one.
Yeah,
I'll do it for
that's a
that.
good idea.
I'll sit it in the shower.
Yeah, we have GH that basically helps with fat loss, one could say, and body recomposition. How would you then use the insulin to get the better use out of the carbohydrates that we're eating? Will it keep us leaner? Will it increase performance? Will it give more muscle growth? What's there to discuss about that?
Yes,
That's out of my wheelhouse, so I'm just
I
here to
think
listen for this.
Blessed can start this one.
Yeah, I think this is basically more for Blessed than Zeno and Caleb, maybe. I also don't know
Zeno knows
anything.
about insulin too.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah,
I
but
said Zeno, Blessed, and maybe Caleb. I don't know.
Oh, sorry, I misheard you.
Yeah.
No, it's so it's very theoretical, right? Like people, there's no studies on like utilizing more insulin than you need. Like insulin is for diabetics, right? It's not for bodybuilders. We don't research that. But then obviously, you know, if it didn't work, people wouldn't be using it. I mean, it's possible that every bodybuilder for the last like 40 years has just been, you know, tricked by every other bodybuilder for the last 40 years and is just using insulin. It does nothing for you. There's this theory, obviously. Well, it's not a theory. There's just, some people believe that if you were to use insulin, that it replaces the insulin your body would produce. It does, and then it's just replacing it, and then you're not, you know, because you can only use so much insulin, and then you don't have any blood glucose left, and then there's no more nutrients to be shuttled into your muscles anymore, right? So the insulin spike that you get when you eat food is a delayed response, first off, and then also it's not necessarily going to be enough insulin to tank your blood glucose, right? It's gonna your blood glucose will stay at an elevated state for an amount of time relative to the amount of nutrients that you consumed, and you can use insulin to basically force all of that into your muscles, and you can do it in a timing window. Like normally you would eat a meal and then your body would slowly produce more and more and more insulin until it breaks down the blood glucose spike, which might be 2 hours later or however long later. But if you have this like highly sensitive window, the highest spike of insulin sensitivity, the highest muscle protein spike, and then you shovel as much food and specifically as much amino acids as you can into your body, because amino acids and micronutrients are also shuttled into skeletal muscle tissue via insulin action, then you pound yourself with insulin and you force all of it in there during the single most sensitive moment in that the one moment where your body can use those nutrients most effectively. And people swear that it works. We don't
And
have any research to back this
when
up. We just
when
have a
would
shit
this
ton of
when would this window be? Because you didn't say that.
it's like as soon as you can eat it. Like if you could have the meal ready for you in the locker room, that would be optimal. And then you would pin your
Yeah. So
insulin
post workout. That was
post
missing
workout.
in the
Sorry,
story.
yeah, post
Yeah.
workout. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
And then of course you can use it like pre-workout to be anti-catabolic. You can use it. You could use Lantus, which has like the all-day effect of lowering your blood glucose, kind of like a health ancillary. It would potentially increase anabolism through insulin action throughout the day, because it's going to have like a forced insulin action even when you're not eating, and then when you do eat, you get more insulin, so just more insulin throughout the entire day. And then also it has like IGF-1 action as well. I mean, if you're using insulin glargine, specifically Lantus, it has higher. That's what Sue showed me, actually.
And do
But
you
yeah, no, let's go ahead.
Sorry. And do you subscribe to basing your carbs on the insulin you use, or basing the insulin on the carbs that you're already eating? Because that's something that I see basically two perspectives online and everywhere being thrown around. One group says, for example, you eat 800 carbs every day, so you use the diet that you already had and then use insulin on top. Or do you say it's better to say, okay, I'm going to eat X amount of carbohydrates to match the amount of insulin that I'm going to use?
So your potential for muscle growth, and this is also theoretical, is not backed up by any science. Your potential for muscle growth is based off of, first off, training stimulus. So we have to assume that people are training optimally, right? And then anabolics, growth hormone, and insulin usage. If you are increasing your anabolics, you're increasing how much muscle you can build. You're increasing how many calories you can consume. So there's like the muscle to fat gain skew. If you're a natty and you've got whatever 700 nanogram per deciliter testosterone, you're not using any supplements, you're not using any drugs, there's an amount of muscle that you can build, and that's it. And as you increase the amount of drugs that you use, sorry, it's not the amount of muscle that you can build. Sorry, there is a place where all of a sudden, if you eat more calories, you're not going to gain more muscle. You're just going to gain more fat. You're going to gain disproportionately more fat. That's the muscle to fat gain skew, right? So up to a certain point, so up to like 300 calorie surplus or something like that, it's pretty lean. You're going to be gaining, a good amount of muscle and not very much fat. And if you go over 500 calories surplus as a natty, all of those calories up to 500 calories is going to be more and more of it is going to be fat. And if you introduce anabolics, if you introduce growth hormone, if you introduce insulin, then the amount, so the skew, the muscle to fat gain skew stays good in higher caloric surpluses. So the choice about how much insulin to use and how many carbohydrates to eat is based around your potential muscle to fat gain skew based off your other drugs. So if you're taking 500 milligrams of testosterone and you're taking 4 IUs of GH, your fat to muscle gain skew is going to be X, where it's on a gradient, obviously. But if you were to take, 2.5 grams and some of that was tren, and you were also taking T4 and you're taking 8 IUs of growth hormone or something like that, then you can consume a lot more calories and your fat to muscle gain skew will be a lot better. In which case, you're going to want to use more insulin because you're using more carbohydrates. And then the choice is ultimately, what is the duration of length of the insulin that you've chosen to use? And are you using it as to shuttle nutrients in the post-workout window, which is the optimal way to use insulin, in my opinion. So you use like a really short-acting insulin, and you put as many carbohydrates and as many amino acids into that post-workout window as possible. And it's not a decision about like how much insulin to use versus how many carbohydrates, or how many carbohydrates versus how many insulin. It's about how much of your total daily macronutrients can you stuff into this window without hurting the rest of your day, because you need to have protein intake throughout the day. You need to have fat intake and carbohydrate intake during the day. So without ruining your other muscle protein synthesis spikes during the day, and without ending up going hypo during the day, or having enough energy during the day, or feeling good throughout the day, how much can you force into this post-workout window according to how many calories you're eating in that day? And then you calculate the insulin to the amount of insulin and carbohydrates you're going to use based off how much you can fit into that window. That's like optimal insulin usage, basically.
I was just going to ask then. So if you're already eating a certain amount per day before adding this in, you've got, just for the sake of the insulin here, you're not changing any other gear if you're using any, and you were to just add an additional 500, 700 calories per day, but you just fit all of that into whatever you're already eating post-workout, adjust your insulin based on the amount of carbs that you would add to that window, and you're going to get, hopefully, at least theoretically, notably more progress just from doing that. Just from that one extra meal, because you've added the insulin and because you've made it scale with the amount of carbs that you chose to eat. That sounds pretty cool. But it also sounds a bit... It sounds too
good to be true.
It sounds too perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds too easy. Obviously,
Try it out, let me know.
we're not talking about any of the downsides of, like, you accidentally take too much insulin, or you haven't worked out your how much carbs per IU that you need before you feel fucking hypo, which
So
sucks.
start conservatively.
Yeah.
Go 1 IU for 20 grams of carbohydrates.
You're better off
See how you
wasting
feel.
some first, just to be
Yeah.
on the safe end.
Nope.
Yeah.
If you feel fine, then, do more IUs per grams carbohydrates until you get down to, 13 grams carbohydrates per IU or something like that. You're probably not going to go further than that. You could. Some people do.
That sounds a lot like what
I don't agree 100% with Blast. From what I've seen, if you're gonna add insulin and then add calories in the form of carbs to what you're already eating, from what I've seen, people they do get more gains, but they also get fit. So from what I've seen, it looks to be a better option to look at what am I already eating, skewing it to around the workout window, which is what we have already discussed, is always a good idea. Then see how much carbs are there in these windows, and then see what you can add without going hypo or having other side effects. And then also regarding the pre or post workout, I have discussed this in the past with Blast, but I'm of the opinion the pre-workout is more important, because insulin is also directly, Blast already said it, is directly anti-catabolic. So also eating carbs before is going to prevent muscle breakdown. And if you're a complete beginner, this is not going to make much difference, because there's not going to be that much breakdown, and the muscle protein synthesis afterwards is sky high. But as you get more advanced, like, the synthesis goes down a bit and the breakdown goes up, so the difference is smaller. And then with the post-workout nutrition meal, basically this is very simplified, but then the muscle protein synthesis goes up, and in the pre-workout the muscle protein breakdown goes down, and you want the difference between these two to be as big as possible. And I'm of the opinion that getting the breakdown lower is important, but that's just based on gut feeling, no data to back this up.
Yeah, because generally in the bodybuilding world, it does seem like most high-end coaches put a higher preference on the post-workout, and they do say that's more important also for breakdown and utilizing this window more properly. But I mean, in the end, just eat both. I mean, we don't really have to pick and choose, of course.
Yeah, I think the answer, honestly, is like, I would use the majority of my insulin in the post-workout meal, but if you're like using insulin as well pre-workout is optimal. Like you would definitely benefit from that. So
What about insulin intra-workout? Does that
I
make
don't think
sense?
so.
I wouldn't risk that.
Yeah, I really don't know anything about insulin. Honestly, I'm just like the viewers watching, so I'm just asking some dumb questions about it. But I mean,
You're
we do
already
take.
using like all of your blood glucose with the training, so you're already going into like this state of like low blood glucose. It's possible that like a super baby amount of insulin with your like intra-workout could potentially be useful if you're doing like a longer workout, like if you're training for like 3 hours or something like that, and you want to basically get all the benefits from the pre-workout insulin to consist over the entirety of the workout. Then you would take an intra-workout shake so that you don't go hypo, and then you would take like a little bit of like instant insulin with that intra-workout shake, and then you would get that anti-catabolic effect over the full 3 hours or however long you're working out for.
You could also just use an insulin with a longer half-life if you knew you were gonna train longer. If you plan to use something like look at the graph and the peaks and the half-lives, because you don't want to go hypo. It's not fun.
Okay, I think that sums it up pretty well. There is a lot of utilization, it turns out, for growth hormone for better body composition, one could say, especially combined with, for example, if one likes it, a fasted cardio. But in general, it does, of course, change the body composition and skew it to a leaner state, a better, what would one say, a better scenario maybe, where we can skew the fat loss, where we skew the muscle to fat gain during a bulk. And the same can be done, of course, with insulin in this case, where we can again get more advantage out of the calories we're eating, especially around the training workout. I think we've had an interesting discussion about intra-workout, peri-workout nutrition. Let's go into some of the Q&A questions, unless someone wants to add anything to this.
I was going to ask about your opinions on stuff like going back to the fasted cardio. We only talked about GH mainly, and then meal timing. But like people use yohimbine to help with it, or
Yeah, but it's also mainly yohimbine is mostly used fasted, because if you don't use it fasted, the yohimbine won't work properly.
Yeah, but that's why I'm asking about fasted cardio.
Okay, sure.
Because it's like how effective is it actually? Because I've used it once and it felt like shit. I just got fucking cold sweats. I mean, it felt great after, but like that was mainly because the cold sweats fucked off. So like, I don't know if that was actually beneficial at all.
Blessed?
I actually have very little experience with yohimbine. I like looked into it super briefly, and I thought to myself, this doesn't seem like large enough return on investment to me, and I don't like the side effect profile. So I just steer clear of it. I've got like 3 bottles. Like whenever I buy something off of a website, and they're like, you get a free something or other for making this purchase. You select from this list of things. Sometimes I'll grab one because it's like usually very high cost. And I think to myself, well, I'll take the gift that has the highest cost associated with it. But then I've never taken it before. So I actually have no idea. I just know that people don't feel good when they take it. So apparently it's great for sexual function as well. But if you're in cold sweats and just feeling like total trash, how can that be good for sex? I don't know.
The cold sweats only last like maybe half hour after you take it.
Okay. Were you just super interested in yohimbine, or are you talking about like things that you could stack with? Yeah,
just other fasted stuff, because I feel like preferably maybe for the sake of the audience as well.
L-carnitine. L-carnitine is the fatty acid shuttle it's the fatty acid shuttle to the mitochondria. So to use as an energy substrate. So if you're doing fasted cardio, you're increasing the amount of fatty acids that are released, and then if they don't get used, they get stored again, right? So if you facilitate the metabolism of fatty acids, that stacks with fasted cardio. It also stacks with growth hormone. Growth hormone does the same thing as fasted cardio. It forces fatty acid release, and L-carnitine forces the metabolism of it. T3, T4, same thing. They increase metabolism. Fatty acids are released. I mean, they can't be used for metabolism if they're not released from your adipose tissue. So if you do fasted cardio, releases the fatty acids, T4, T3, they metabolize it. So,
what do you think then about ECGC, for example? That's more of a natural compound, because a lot of viewers are probably not going to utilize many medications and drugs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like for the sake of the audience.
Yeah, we have like
some
caffeine,
non-PED stuff,
for example. Caffeine in and of itself can be useful. ECGC as well. helps with fat mobilization, I believe. Also in the combination with fasted cardio, it's beneficial.
So I don't remember what the mechanism of action for ECGC is. I remember reading about it, and I remember being very convinced that ECGC is great for body composition, fatty, and the burning of fat. So it works. But how does it work? And if it is a fatty acid releaser, then it doesn't necessarily stack with fasted cardio. It might, if you really, really, really want to release fatty acids, then it would be useful in the same way that fasted cardio would be useful. But if it's more like L-carnitine, it somehow facilitates the metabolism of fatty acids, then it would stack with fasted cardio. It would be like, yeah,
Okay.
definitely take ECGC if it metabolizes fatty acids. But I don't remember what the method of action for ECGC is. So.
And what about the general classic ECA stack? Ephedrine, caffeine, aspirin.
Ephedrine's really effective at causing fatty acid release. It's getting banned everywhere. Oh my god, I hate that so much because caffeine is so long lasting.
True.
I mean, if you do your workouts in the evening, which I usually do, caffeine is a terrible choice because then you can't sleep. Ephedrine is so short lasting, and it's so potent. I mean, like the drive that you get from ephedrine in the gym is mega. I love it for cardio. And then obviously it's hyper synergizes with cardio because it causes fatty acid release, and cardio is where you're burning the most energy. So you want your fatty acids to be released while you're burning the most energy, and ephedrine does that. Aspirin has a bunch of cool health benefits. It's a PPRA agonist, so yeah, it facilitates some fatty acid metabolism. It's not very strong though, so I don't think it's super useful in that stack.
Yeah, but that's just a classic, the ECA stack.
The classic.
Yeah, I vaguely remember there being a reason for that being in there, but I
Yeah,
can't
exactly. There was some combination of the three. That
But
was like,
when I read it, I was like, oh, this makes sense. So I'm guessing it's not a PPA or a agonism.
okay, does that cover that question, you think, Caleb?
Yeah.
Yeah, also L-carnitine is also a natural supplement. It works better if you inject it, but you can take it orally.
How much
It's
more
gonna
do we
take
need
a
to
lot.
take orally if we don't go in the injectable route?
I think it was like
Because I
6
know
times.
it's quite substantial.
It was like 500 milligrams injected versus 3 grams ingested.
Yeah, I believe 3 or 4 grams, if I remember correctly, is what one would have to take orally to get the same effects from the 500 milligrams injected. But it does work. So also for people that don't even want to inject anything, it's a decent route to go. It does help with fat loss in the end.
It also contributes to cardiovascular disease, which you might be able to mitigate to some degree with allicin from garlic supplements, because it would reduce TMAO production in the gut, which is how carnitine causes cardiovascular disease. And then also allicin has it's a sulfuric compound. It's also a vasodilator, so it's going to be performance enhancing as well. It's just going to stink when you're in the gym.
So combine a garlic supplement together with L-carnitine.
Yeah, performance enhancing, and also protects your heart, which is very important as a bodybuilder.
Because isn't the TMAO being harmful more a theory than being like 100% shown to be causative?
Yeah, I'm pretty convinced, but yeah, you're right.
Okay, yeah, so it's like it's a theory, but it's a highly probable theory, and yeah, it's if there is something with a high probability of damaging you, then it's probably smart to just do the safer thing.
Better be safe than sorry in those instances if there's a high probability.
And garlic extract is cheap enough that it's just worth getting anyway.
True.
So
just
good.
in general, not even if you combine it with L-carnitine, but in general, it will have such amazing benefits cardiovascular-wise. It's really hard to not add that into a supplement stack, I think.
It's also like an antimicrobial that pretty selectively affects like bad bacteria. Like it improves gut microbiome as opposed to, it doesn't nuke it. It doesn't like kill all the good bacteria. I mean, it kills some good bacteria, but it preferentially kills bad bacteria. So it's good for gut health, gut brain axis, gut everything axis. It's good for you.
Yeah. Should we go into the Q&A? Yeah. Okay. Well, the first question I think that would then tie on to all of this is carbs during the cut. What is then an effective choice? And I think that perfectly links to the intra-workout, peri-workout discussion. I think if you have carbs left, don't try to divide them into 15 grams of pasta throughout the day, but shuttle them all around the most useful window. That is my take on it.
Yeah.
So what would you guys do during a cut? Carbs, do we leave them in? Do we cut them out completely? Do we try to always keep carbs in to utilize the training? What's there the best take?
I would rather go zero fat than zero carb, personally.
Yeah.
Carbs are so important. I feel like shit if I don't have carbs. I can deal with the no fats, but oh my God. My training would suffer if I just, you got to have always, like, if you're going to have any carbs at all, pre and post workout, if you really can't afford the intra workout, your carb allotment, you skip the intra, do the pre and post. So yeah, that's what I think.
Anyone else?
I'd prioritize. So, like, if you can't do anything else, do pre-workout carbs. Then, if you can, add post. And then, if you know that it helps your sleep, I would then put it third at sleep, and then fourth, I'd worry about intra personally. But it affects my sleep, so don't worry about before bed. And then, so it would just be a pre, then post, then intra if you got enough. So, but then I guess towards the end of the cut, you might want to actually make sure you shift maybe some away from one of the pre or post windows. I'm just not sure which, to add some intra, just so you have that little bit more energy throughout the workout.
Yeah, I would personally prioritize the post. Personally, I would think that would be more important. And then for me, it would be, of course, if it dramatically increases your sleep quality, of course, have it with your sleep. But let's say that's not the case. If you just have to choose around the workout window, then I would go for post, most important, I think. Then pre-workout, secondly, and then intra-workout as a third. But one has to add that intra-workout nutrition is basically post-workout nutrition. Because, for example, if we train our chest and then do 4 different body parts after, and then it's 1.5 hours later, that ingested drink during the intra-workout basically becomes the post-workout drink for the chest exercise. So I believe in some studies they don't necessarily say intra-workout, but then the intra-workout shake is also classified as a post-workout supplement, basically, or more a recovery supplement, I believe. And then they measure the stats after the training. So it's basically measuring how the intra-workout training then is a post-recovery drink. So one could also view it as that. It basically comes down to personal preferences, I think.
I think there's 3 things to take into consideration, and I think that having energy around your workout is really important. Having your nutrients available during the muscle protein synthesis insulin-sensitive window is important. I think that what affects your mood is probably the most important. I get grumpy if I don't have breakfast, and so that affects my day, and so it's a cascading effect on everything. Like, taking care of your mental health is really important. So I think in the same way that, like, if you feel nauseous when you take like an intra-workout shake, then maybe don't take an intra-workout shake. Like, do something else. Like, eat Fruit Loops. Like, that's real. Like, if you're doing like a 3-4 hour workout and you can't get a shake down, but you can get Fruit Loops down, dude, eat some fucking Fruit Loops for sure. If you feel like trash, like if you can't sleep without carbs, you gotta have some before bed. If you're grumpy in the morning because you don't have breakfast, you gotta do that. But I think there's one more thing to take into consideration, and that's like, it's probably like intermittent fasting has become really popular, and a lot of people do it as like people believe that it works for various whatever reasons. The same way they might believe that the keto diet works or that the carnivore diet works, or something like that. And like, it has health benefits, unlike the carnivore diet. I'm sorry, all the carnivore diet lovers. I'm sorry. And the keto diet has some benefits too, but mostly the way that they work is they're like a crutch for caloric restriction. So if it works for you, because you can't diet without doing intermittent fasting or some other type of fasting, then do it. If that's the only way that you can do it, then do it. Like, rely on what works for you. Like, having breakfast in the morning because you're grumpy, or eating Fruit Loops because of whatever. Like, do what works for you. But in terms of actual body composition, if you are in like a prolonged state of not eating, your body is going to scavenge your muscle and other lean tissues for amino acids in order to feed the systems that it deems the most important. And you're going to have like these severely low, you're going to have fractional synthetic rate is going to be really low, fractional synthetic breakdown is going to be really high. If you're a bodybuilder, that's not good. And actually, if you're any type of athlete, that's not good, because it doesn't matter if you're a runner or what you are, like, you need to have muscles in the places that you need to have muscles. And if the muscles that you need to be whatever are constantly getting broken down or not getting fed, then your body composition is going to be worse, and not just to do with like scavenging of muscles, but also body fat percentage and adipose tissue loss in like an energy deficit in a fasted, if you're doing some sort of intermittent fasting versus if you do like a normal diet with the same amount of energy deficit, the body composition values are always better in normal dieting than in a fasting based diet. So definitely make sure that you space your meals out throughout the day.
Yeah, so to just summarize the question, carbs during a cut, leave them in, but utilize them in a way that you personally prefer. So it doesn't really matter when you time them, but just time them at some time where you have a feeling of it maybe benefiting you mentally, benefiting your performance in any way, shape, or form. Same goes for the intermittent fasting. If that is really the only way to basically not cheat throughout the day because you cramp all the calories into one bucket, go for that route. Or if you can avoid it, probably avoid it. But there it really comes down to personal preferences. I will link this to the next question, and it is a question towards me, what the reason is that I took out carbs during the end of my cut, and why don't other people do this? And it also links to the question that the person asked before, should we carb cycle and stuff like that? I will just cover this real quick. We have discussed carb cycling and stuff like that before in the different episodes. So if someone wants the answer to carb cycling or the general idea of that, check out the episode. Basically, why don't I have carbs at some point? Well, during the entire diet, I basically cut out carbs on the days that I'm not training because I don't need them. Why would I eat carbs? Easy calories one. I have burned maybe 500 calories less, so I can take out 500 calories. Then I deplete on those days to then utilize the carbs better on the other days. That's for the carb cycling. But what's the reason that I end up with no carbs at the end of a cut? Well, I have to cut something. I mean, my fats were already down to 20 grams a day, not even from direct sources, just from the entire diet. And I have to cut something out, so I need to cut the carbs. And why do other bodybuilders have carbs in there? Well, they're 20 kilograms heavier muscle-wise, so they can eat more. And I just have 1,800 calories left. And I personally then prefer to get it all out of protein instead of having 100 grams of carbs left from vegetables. That's just my personal preference. But do you guys sometimes cut out all the carbs, or do you always leave that in?
Personally, I mean, I haven't ever had to cut out carbs completely, so I don't know. We'll see at the end of this diet if I actually have to on my off days. Right now, I'm at 300 grams of carbs on my off days, so I mean, we'll see. I'm sure I might have to, so. Or my coach might have to. It's up to him. We'll see.
Anyone else? Zeno, you finished up your cut lately?
Yeah.
Or recently?
For me, it's actually the same as Max. I never hit to dig that deep because I have never gotten that lean. And maybe even to get that lean, I would not need to pull back calories that much. It's hard to say. But yeah, I haven't had the need. If there was a need, yeah, you have to do what you have to do. But like, hasn't happened yet. I hope it will never happen.
I hope so too for you, because it sucks. Blessed, I know you often do a protein spared modified fast, and I think some other guys might have done it as well.
I couldn't remember if anybody here had done a PSMF
I
before.
did it.
Has
I
anybody
did
here?
it like the last 2 weeks of my cut was protein sparing modified fast. And I've done it before for 14 days as well.
What was your macronutrient intake during the PSMF, and how long did it last?
It was 14 days, 400 grams of protein.
And
that's it.
And 0 carbohydrates?
Yeah.
Whoa! Holy Christ! That's really extreme.
I thought
that is
one
totally nuts.
I thought one had to cut out all carbs.
Only usually, I read the Lyle McDonald book, but maybe I'm remembering it incorrectly. I was pretty sure.
Well, I didn't really look into it that much. I just read the Discord, and then I've done it 3 times now, every cut, because at the end, I'm always done. I don't want to cut anymore. And then the first time I did it, I was like, man, I'm so done with this cut. I'm just going to do protein sparing modified fast. And then I just cranked it out 4 weeks. And in my head, it was protein sparing modified fast. It's just protein. It's basic. And I've never looked into it after that. This was 2 years ago.
It's nuts. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to have at least 200 calories of carbohydrates per day. So you're at least supposed to have 50 grams of carbohydrates per day. And then,
well, it worked. So
I bet it worked.
I mean, the protein sparing modified fast, of course, has certain utilities. That's what it's done for. I mean, for example, curing fatty liver disease and stuff like that. I think that's where it's utilized sometimes. But yeah, I just did it because I wanted to be done as quick as possible. And then my theory, that's what I then just did, was if I just crank up my proteins extremely high, I get the maximum amount of muscle retention possible. I drop down my carbs. If I feel good, I just continued and I drop the maximum amount of fat possible. Maybe I lose a little bit of muscle, but I want to be done with the cut. So that was my thought behind it.
So
Pretty stupid,
it's another
probably.
one of those like highly theoretical diets. I think it's not for natties. First off, anybody watching, don't do PSMF as a natty. You're just going to lose a lot of muscle. Anabolics have receptor crosstalk with the glucocorticoid receptor. It prevents our muscle from breaking down. Certain anabolics are better for it. I would never do a PSMF without at least VAR, but preferably tren, because it's going to prevent the breakdown of muscle, which is going to happen when you're eating 800
Yeah,
to
with
1200
tren
calories
you
per
can
day.
just literally take everything out and then just live on protein and you will just retain.
It's crazy to think that you did it with 0 carbs, because the amount of gluconeogenesis that was happening was probably like so minimal, like then just enough for brain function. I don't know how you
Dude,
willpower that
I
out
literally thought that you need to do that.
14 days. 14 days with 0 grams of carbohydrates. That's totally. I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
dropped
That's
like
mind
5
blowing.
kilograms or something.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. The weight loss is extreme.
Yeah, I
That
bet.
looks.
Fuck.
Okay, next
He's-
time I will add in carbs.
I was gonna say,
Dude, I had
Lyle's
zero
actual
energy
thing-
literally the entire time. I was so brain dead. I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. Literally I did this. This was the last podcast episode. I was just in my head completely brain dead, sitting there trying to look for words to keep it flowing. And it took so much energy. When we were done with the podcast, I went straight to bed. I didn't eat and was like, boom, and I was out. So
You look good. I had no idea.
yeah,
What were you
when
gonna
we
say,
were
Caleb?
training,
Sorry.
when we were training on that day, I was still doing the protein sparing modified fast.
That's crazy. You were doing. You're doing great. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that his actual Lyle McDonald's actual write up for it also involves a program that you're supposed to do with it. You only fast properly for like 4 or 5 of the days. Then one of the days actually has a carb up built into it, and part of that is when you do like this fucking stupidly long full body workout, and then the next day you also still eat carbs, but at maintenance again, so it's actually even way higher, and then you just go straight back into it. So
Makes
it's like
sense.
a carb cycling type thing.
Dude, and I didn't, you know what I thought the protein sparing modified fast was? I thought it was some type of fast to fix your health. I didn't even.
No,
No.
that's the fasting mimicking diet, and that's basically only eating some vegetables.
Yeah, just
Oh man,
salads.
yeah, I really never looked into it at all. I just literally saw like 2 years ago in the Discord, something like protein sparing modified fast. You eat a lot of protein, and then I thought it was for health. I didn't even know it was like a bodybuilding program or something.
It could be for health. Like, I mean, you're definitely gonna crank insulin sensitivity, and you're definitely gonna lose a lot of fat for sure.
Okay, well, I'm never going to do this again in this way then. Okay, that answers the question. Why didn't I have any carbs? Well, it was me not being educated about what I did. I just did something. But it worked, so it's fine. I mean, I kept a lot of muscle, so that's good. But it's still tip: read up about what you do. Don't just follow stuff blindly. Okay, let's see. One more question.
PSMF is like the trend of dieting. Like, read up before you do it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't just inject tren. Read about it. That's the same for protein sparing modified fast. Apparently, I didn't know that. I think this might be a good one, and it ties onto the discussion we had a little bit about the carbs. Is it better to train late in the evening and then sleep a little amount, or to not train and have a good night of sleep? I think
Not
that's
train and have a good night's sleep.
yeah. I think that just from a health perspective, but okay, let's say there is no. Okay, we will just make an ultimatum to answer this question properly. Ultimatum 1 is the only option to train is to then have 4 nights a week less good sleep. And the other thing is, you can train and have proper sleep. That's basically the question and basically the ultimatum. So I think then one would have to compromise their sleep on some nights
Yeah.
to just train. I mean, that basically answers itself, but of course, in an ideal world,
Yeah, you're gonna have no muscle if you don't train with it. So train.
Yeah.
Train, not getting any sleep. Yeah. Do
Yeah.
that.
But even without the ultimatum, because I agree, sleep is important, but like training is more important. Okay, for general health, obviously it's not a good idea, but if we're purely talking about gains, like training is higher up on the hierarchy of how important things are than sleep. So I would definitely say just train and then take the loss.
from a personal experience, I have built all my muscle except the muscle that I built in the last year on 6 hours of sleep, something like that. I've never slept. I have such a shit sleep regimen, hygiene, structure, everything. That's my biggest problem. Now I'm getting better, but that has been my biggest problem. But literally all the progress I made has been on shit sleep, where I slept at 2 in the night and then got 6 hours or maybe 8 hours. But late sleep, shitty sleep quality, always tired. I fall asleep within 1 minute if I check my data because I'm so exhausted. So I have a shitty sleep regimen and you still build muscle. And if I would not train, I would not build muscle. So
Yeah, I regularly train and get like less than 6 hours sometimes, to be honest.
yeah.
Like 4 hours, 3 hours even.
Yeah, it's basically what Zeno said. If you don't train, there is no muscle. If you do train, even if your sleep is shit, you will build muscle. But one has to add that if you will sleep properly on top of the right training, that's when you will actually blow up. At least that's what I've noticed, is when I started to finally, if I do have those nights where I hit going to bed at 10, sleep 10 hours, dude, it's like I wake up with a pump. I'm so full, I look perfect. So I think when one finally sleeps, then you can unlock even more gains. But of course, it's better to train and sleep a little bit less, right? I don't know, Blessed, what do you think about it?
I agree.
You agree? Okay.
I want to make jokes.
What's the joke?
Just pound stims, go to the gym, fuck sleep. Like, who cares? Sleep's
Yeah.
not that important.
You can always compensate with drugs for sleep.
You can always compensate with drugs. More drugs, more better.
No,
I've
don't
had
do that.
weeks. I've had weeks
no one
where
should do
I
that.
legitimately didn't get sleep for 3 nights, and it was
And then took Tren.
no, it's because of stims and work, but like no sleep. Straight up, it was like 72 hours, 80 hours a week before I got sleep, and I still trained Actually, I think I trained like a second time a day because I'm like, I'm awake, I got nothing to do. It's 4 a.m. Can't sleep. Fuck it, let's go.
Again, we end on sleep. How is this possible? I don't know. This is every episode we end with a question about sleep. But it's, again, like every other episode, the perfect end, because even though it's not perfect with everyone, for example, me, I'm no saint. Sleeping is, of course, important. So we will all be going to bed, at least most of us. Caleb sacrificed his sleep to make it to this podcast.
Handsome
No, I didn't
son
actually.
of a
I went to
gun.
bed. I got 7 hours last night.
Okay, good.
Nice.
Yeah, but again, we end on the notion of sleep, an important subject. Please, even though it's so incredibly hard, please prioritize your sleep, and you will see a great influx of gains. But as you heard during the last question, you can't skip on sleep, but if you skip sleep and train, you will still grow. And I think that is the perfect end. We had a great discussion about everything, targeting post, pre, intra-workout, other timing of nutrients, pre-workout, fasted cardio, and some medication and drugs to then get more out of that cardio that's in a fasted state. So I think it's a good topic, or at least it's good that we finally discussed something in a straight topic. I think the viewers can expect more of this. If you want to see more of this, and I hope you do after watching this, hit the subscribe button down below, leave a like, leave a comment, maybe that boosts us in some way, I don't know. But thank you for watching, everyone, and also thank you for everyone that came on to share their knowledge in House of Knowledge. See you guys next time.